It's a huge delight today to speak with a wonderful friend. We go back a little while, don't we, Benjamin?
Yes.
There's a few things. We will always have Vancouver. I'm just going to let that hang there for people. There's a story there. But we've
private story.
we've worked in together alongside a whole lot of different things, ecumenically and interfaith, and it's one of the greatest delights for me, apart from coming to Pitt Street, obviously, that to come back to Sydney to be able to spend time with you. And then, of course, they locked us down. So I'm hoping that we will get together. But for the benefit of those who don't, what would you like? How would you like to introduce yourself as a person of faith and as a person and such like? And what's your story? What's your story? We're looking at hospital.
Well, just to begin with, I live on Gadigal land, and like you, I pay respects to our elders, past, present, and emerging. My pronoun is he, his, them, I think, and yeah. So that's I'm very, very, very fortunate to have been working, connecting, having a wonderful friendship with you, Joe, and with Pitt Street. Pitt Street is a sanctuary for me. It's one of that few sanctuaries in Sydney that I can hide my spirit to replenish my soul a bit, and then go out there and deal with all the all the insanity that sometimes life can be here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And you're a member of the Catholic Church still?
Yes. Still? Still?
We all are in a way. Well, a lot of us.
I have friends who say that, why don't you just give up? Well, it's not for me to give up. That's the thing. Yes.
We're going to talk today a little bit about hospitality, and particularly and partly but from a queer perspective a little bit, but particularly in terms of multiculturalism and the challenges that there are that we face in Australia and Asia Pacific, and how the Bible's wrestling with some of those things. So what does hospitality mean to you from a faith perspective?
I think of me growing up, that when we had my own family home, it did not matter who came into our home. First, you take off the slippers or your shoes at the doorstep. It is both practical and spiritual as a ritual. It is a sign of reverence for the home, and it doesn't matter if you're the sovereign of that land, or if you are someone that is, least, that you're in the margins. We all do that. And when you are seated, you offer tea or water. We all share that same dignity. There is this acknowledgement of reverence, and that we all need water. And I think that forms a bit of that foundation of what I sense hospitality is. And I remember when I was growing up, I grew up in Malaysia. It's permanently 33 degrees and the humidity is 140 degrees. You just walk out and water just starts forming on you. And my mother would offer a glass of water. My father would offer a glass of water to either the post person that's delivering the mail. It's just this you go out of your way intentionally.
Yes.
Even
that's really striking what you said about the water, because I think that's beautiful that Jesus says again, doesn't he? Those who give a glass of water to one of my little ones. That attitude of reverence in things, and to people. Because we have today the text with two texts, with the fabulous text really, and the one about from the gospel about the temple, and what you're saying about approaching the temple. But Jesus is clearly extremely unhappy, isn't he, about the lack of reverence. I mean, we get the turning over the
Mm,
tables and so on as well with that, because
mm,
it's been turned into something very irreverent.
mm,
But
mm.
there's that hospitality.
Yes.
How do you look at that gospel text that we have?
I Mark, the account of Mark's gospel is really interesting because it frames, it sets up the scene that, this, so to speak, the privileged establishment, the religious establishment, how they present. So it paints that picture first, and about respectability, and about places of honor. It's such a deliberate juxtaposition that's deliberately done, isn't it?
Yes.
To, if you like, the least powerful, the person or at least the person we assume has the least agency. We assume,
Yeah.
but yet this woman, by her commitment to hospitality, she is providing hospitality to the scribes.
Yes. Yes.
He is paying to make sure that they have those things. I mean, it's such a naughty juxtaposition,
Yes. Yeah.
and in her role, she gives it all.
Yes.
And Jesus rebukes
Yes.
the power by saying, by juxtaposing this, and he goes that, this person, who it's in her poverty, has put everything that she has lived on.
Yes.
I mean, the opposite of it is these scribes who has everything, has put out nothing.
Yes. Huge power differential, isn't there? And I'm struck,
Absolutely.
having talked about church history as well, early church history, about how the widows, particularly, there was an order of widows, and one of the things the church was very strong on was looking after women, young women as well, but also widows, because of course there was no sort of social security system or anything. You really were out, so it's a huge thing. Some scholars recently have also said, I don't know what you feel about this, in terms of that power, which you've identified very well, is the way in which the contrast about this money stuff that is core to this overturning tables as well. That is there an element in this, do you think, of Jesus expressing his anger at the injustice that this woman is also, in a way, that the danger of churches, as it were, ripping off the poor and the marginalised, misusing hospitality to, instead of them being the people who need to be empowered and given resources to be able to change their circumstances, rather than this is the only space that they can find some kind of value.
I mean, the scripture deliberately in a short sentence within chapter 12, deliberately, I mean, it doesn't need to say that, but it deliberately in that short sentence says, many rich people put in large sums.
Yes.
I mean, it's almost emphasizing again about crowd putting money into the treasury, but it deliberately in one sentence says many rich people put in large sums. I think about rich people in our country, around the world, put in large sums to advertising political, boards. They're not necessarily utilizing it for lifting justice, for upholding justice, but to nestle the status quo so that it's even more feathered.
Yes.
And I think part of the rebuke that Jesus, the Christ, tries to juxtapose, you've got all of this money, and yes, you put into, so to speak, a good cause, but again to feather your own nest, so that you have places of honor, in high places. And I'm thinking about church leaders, in our various churches and different denominations who put money to nestle their power, to pander to the status quo instead of offer radical hospitality, to make sure that God, if you like, Jesus of the poor, God of the poor, is centered.
Yes.
And so I think that deliberate juxtaposition talks about using wealth or abusing wealth, and misplacing wealth, actually willfully misplacing wealth, for their own purposes.
Yeah.
And in some ways, that might be the ultimate, abomination, if you like, that gift that's been given misuse.
That's a big challenge, isn't it, really, in terms of, I think, as a white person, as a West person as well, of the power of the, of money and where we put, I mean, it is lovely in a way that, well, it is lovely that we can have boosters, for example, or some people can have. But when I think about the injustices of the number of people who don't have any virus at all, any vaccine at all, that's just one stark example of the way in which, what are we doing with our power and our money? So it really does challenge us. But the other thing I'm conscious of as well, and I think it comes out particularly in that second story we've had today about Ruth, is how these things are also mixed up, this money and power, with race, and also with gender, which touched on in the gospel. And there have been quite a few people lately, post-colonial theologians, who've written about that Ruth text, as well as queer theologians, that this is a text that is easily forgotten, isn't it, really? I mean, how do you approach that story of Ruth and the coming together of a woman who comes from a very different culture and race, one that's quite despised, actually, in some Israel, and yet she makes this commitment and receive Naomi too, to get a very powerful symbol, isn't it, of a different sort of hospitality and operating race, power, and money.
It's, I think for our limited human mind, and of course our limited experience, and I wonder whether 100 years from now people will look back and say, oh, that was the point of this text. I mean, many of us are still struggling on the relationship, of Naomi and Ruth. And I think that's wonderful. That's the point of stories. They are meant to be, to puzzle us. I mean, what's the point of telling a story that doesn't challenge us? I think I'm thinking of the Syrophoenician women. Yeah, I'm thinking about in Jesus's times anyway. In Syrophoenician women, the Samaritan woman at the well. People, just the widow, this widow that is centered in this story, of Jesus. It is the absolutely subversive, radical hospitality of God that is trying to.
They're found by these marginal people, aren't they? Really? Well, one, women in general, but also people of different race. Because in Syrophoenician, Samaritan, what's that?
That's right. And class.
Yes, class. That's very important.
Yes.
And
yes.
Because one of the interesting things, of course, is, and Matthew's gospel puts this well as we come towards Christmas, is that in Jesus's genealogy, as it were, there's these 4 women who come before Mary, and each of them, Bathsheba, maybe she was a Judean, but she was married, and it's quite clear, to the Hittite. So they're making quite clear the racial thing, and the sex. Some of these figures are quite sexually, Tamar and Rahab are questionable from certain people's morality.
Yes.
Are the foremothers of Jesus. So this Ruth is really, really powerful, and maybe that's part of the reason it stayed in the in the Bible, because there's so few books, aren't there, on Ruth and Esther. I think that's it, isn't it, for women's women. But
and of course, the mother of Jesus.
Yes, but it's not because they're women, as you say, it's their location, isn't it? It's marginality, and because it's very. I mean, that story, both Naomi and Ruth seem to me to be, they're living in this hugely patriarchal culture, dependent on men. So when the men disappear, they're left. So what is Ruth to do? She could go home. She's going to live in another and probably be tolerated but within her background, perhaps. But she leaves behind this older woman who probably won't ever get married again. So it's a big commitment to leave your country, isn't it? Your culture, and work in that.
A while ago, I wrote a piece about my own feelings about me feeling constantly displaced, and it's not meant to be a piece about feeling bad about oneself. It was trying to reflect on what does that actually mean to feel displaced culturally, to feel displaced. I mean, earlier you're talking about where they are, it's about their place. Well, it's all about displacement. All of these stories, if there is one constancy about them, it's how these people are all displaced.
Yes.
But God nestles right there.
Yes.
That is in this displacement. That
so
you're gonna.
We find divine hospitality in the midst of displacement.
Yes.
Even if it can't be restored, the effects of colonialism cannot be eradicated. They may be transfigured, but they can't. And that's where divine hospitality sits for us. Do you think?
Yes, and I think the bit that you're mentioning when you're speaking about divine hospitality, often it's thing that we are doing good to another. But something about radical hospitality, divine hospitality, when you offer that hospitality to another who is different, demonized, marginalized, displaced, it is actually good for oneself. I mean, there's this reciprocity with the soul of oneself, because there is the displacement that we all feel within ourselves. Who are we? That is the eternal question. Who am I and who are you, God? I mean, that's what Francis of Assisi often apparently asks in his prayers. Who am I and who are you, God? And I think the practice of this hospitality, it's not about charity or this paternalistic, patronizing charity. It is deeper. It is about us flourishing fully when we get what divine hospitality looks like. Earlier you mentioned about, for example, the Ruth and Naomi story, and you mentioned about Christmas, I think earlier. I must say, very often, recently anyway, when I read, the paragraph, that famous quote from Ruth, that's often used in wedding vows, wherever you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. There I will be buried.
You can't, it's obvious. A huge human commitment relationship is one of the deepest expressions. How that
love
woman to another. It's like, well, how can you not see that? And
love,
how can you not see that this love, this God and divine love, the Hebrew words in it, are in this relationship, and therefore the basis of it, irrespective of what class, race, background, culture you come from. That's the core thing, isn't it?
Yes. I don't know what you think about this, but recently as I read this, I often think of Christmas. It reminds me of the theology of the word incarnate, that the word became
Yeah,
flesh and
yeah,
lived among us. And, we have seen their glory and the glory of the first and only child, full of grace and truth. John 1:14. That passage is directly connected. Jesus is directly connected to that ancestry of
yeah,
Ruth, of course, and
yeah.
Naomi. That is how the word incarnate happened.
Yes.
God
That's
God
the
says,
love. That's the love of Christmas, isn't
that's
it?
right.
Not
God says to
manipulating
human,
that
abs-
one man or whatever he was.
no,
It's this whole, it's,
cosmic
yeah,
cosmic theology, right? That in that word that became flesh and came among us, full of grace and truth, it's where God says, as if repeating Ruth's word, that wherever you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people. And, wherever you die, I will be buried. Jesus died, got buried. If we believe in the anointed one, the Christ who came amongst us, that's what happened.
yes.
I can't help but that's a connection.
Yeah, it's that. And thank you for that link of leading into Christmas. Now, we could talk for a long while, and you've opened up so much, and I hope that it starts for other people. But in thinking about Christmas, there's a project that you've been working on, and I've been happy to support through Equal Voices as well, called the Asia Pacific Songs Project. And
Yeah.
would you like to say something about that? Because I think a lot of it would be delighted to hear about this and to be able to share in this as you launch.
Thank you for the support, thank you for the community support. Actually, we floated this. My colleague Kevin Buffman, my good friend and colleague Kevin Buffman, and I floated this idea about all this xenophobia that's coming out, because, as you know, as part of the Asian Australian Alliance, as a convener, we've been really receiving reports of all of this corona racism, we call it coronavirus racism, and it's horrible. And we hear all of this xenophobia, and in addition to that, of course, you've got politicians cashing in on xenophobia. You've got Indian Australians being locked out of the country. We've got migrants being displaced, people who are here who we welcome to our care, students, international students, migrant workers, who we ask them, go back to where you come from. We don't want you here. I mean, it is the exact opposite of the gospel's call for care and hospitality. And
Precisely what these readings are speaking about today, yes.
absolutely. And then you have one nation proposing all of these horrible bills, against our trans siblings. And you've got, a national government who has, it's so sad that with all, who covers up, abuse against women, who our inhospitality towards asylum seeker refugees, siblings, who, and of course that federal bill that they're going to propose about using religion as a front to discriminate against other people. I mean, that is the ultimate blasphemy in my mind. It's heresy. Anyway, sorry, I rant. The project, so I was thinking, I can't cope for one more second of doing, some of this policy advocacy stuff. Is there any way that I could use something positive? So this was how it happened. Sounds of Christmas from Asia Pacific. We came up with that. We thought, let's bring together all of these diaspora communities who are Australians, who are here, who are doing amazing things. Let's ask them to perhaps use their own language to sing the radical hospitality that is in the Christmas story. And these are people who have committed themselves to human rights, to being welcoming of refugees and asylum seekers, who are committed to LGBTIQ affirmingness. Sometimes you have heard since the plebiscite on marriage equality, that Western suburbs people are particularly bigoted. That people of color, migrant communities are the one, again, blaming the outsider, right? So this album is to debunk that. These are people who are out there offering radical hospitality. And we also know that Christmas is a lonely time for a lot of people who struggle. who economically are really challenged because of our systemic problems. We also think about people who are separated from their loved ones. We thought, let's sing together with all these diverse languages in our own diverse tongue. Let's decenter the usual image of Christmas, And so this was how the Sounds of Christmas from Asia Pacific was born. So that was how we came, and we applied to the city of Sydney to do a project like that. And they came back and said, yes, we are going to give you a matching grant, and here we are.
That's fun. But I know early on we did talk that if things had been different, we could have launched it in Pitt Street or something. But there's going to be an online launch, isn't there? The Friday,
yes.
Friday just at the end, the last.
Friday 26th.
November?
Friday 26th of November at 8 p.m. on Zoom. Yeah.
So we invite people to join and also to share the music.
Yes. Oh, the CD. So just to let you know, we have only limited edition of the CD, not because we did it, to put up the price, but we have no budget to do more CDs. So by that default, we have limited edition. So we know some people are buying for their organizations, their staff, their family and stuff. I think pre-sale is going to start in the middle of November. So just watch this space. It's good. Yeah.
That's fabulous. And it's just one of the many things that you bring to us and encourage us. Mm-hmm. I hope that we will have many more conversations, not just between the two of us, but with all the different people that we connect with, and that we can place this radical hospitality back in the heart of not just our lives and lives of churches, but the lives of our community and the world, which is so desperately needed. So thank you so much, Benjamin, and God bless you and all that you do.
And all of you, and God bless all of you for your ministry at Pitt Street. Go forth and help create human flourishing as you always have.
Amen.
Amen.